Hey everyone, it's Hunter and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, it is so nice to meet you. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys all of the books that I read in 2020, the ones that I really loved in 2020, because I read quite a lot of books in 2020. I have a Kindle Paperwhite, and because of that, I have read so many books recently, so I wanted to share with you guys all the ones I read in 2020 that I really loved. This video would be like an hour long if I were to tell you about all of the books that I read, because this list has 76 books in it. So I thought that I would just share with you guys the ones that I really loved, the ones that really stood out to me, because like some of them, I'm looking at this list and I don't even remember what happened in the book. Like I could not give you a synopsis of the book because I don't remember it, because it just didn't stand out to me. So I wanted to share the one that really stood out to me. So that's what I'm sharing with you guys. If you enjoy videos like this, or if you want more book videos, let me know, because I am planning to read 100 books in 2021. My goal for 2020 was 52 and I read 76, so that's why I kind of upped my goal to 100 to see if I can do it. So far for 2021, I have read 9 books, and I'm filming this on January 16th. So we're halfway through the first month and I've already read 9% of the books that I want to read. So yeah, anyway, so I wanted to share with you guys the ones that I really loved. If you want to see a full list of every book that I read in 2020, then I put a list on my Instagram story, and I have made a highlight on my Instagram. So if you want to see that whole list, then follow me or just go look at it and screenshot it, and then you can see all the books. And on that list, I also highlighted the ones that I liked the best, so you'll know which ones were really good. So before we get started, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel, and let's go ahead and get started. You know, I heated up this cinnamon roll like 30 minutes ago. It's kind of cold again. I got it from Lidl. You guys been to Lidl? Also, guys, I already filmed this video one time, and that's why I know it takes an hour for me to film the whole thing. So that's why we're only doing the favorites. So let's start with number 1. If You Tell by Greg Olson. This one was based on a true story, and I really liked this one because it read like a novel, but it was like biographical, and I thought that was really cool. It's very disturbing, but it's really good if you're into like true crime novels. So definitely check that one out if you like true crime. Next was A Fire Sparkling by Julianne McLean. This one is historical fiction, and basically this woman, her relationship goes to crap, and she visits her grandma and finds a picture of her grandma with a Nazi officer, and because of that she like explores that whole story, figures out what happens. Regretting You by Colleen Hoover, and this one is about a mom and her daughter who don't have a great relationship, and then her dad gets in an accident, and then there's just like a bunch of secret that her dad was keeping from them. Really good, really good. Next is When I Was You by Minka Kent. There is this girl basically who finds a stranger who is pretending to be her, and Minka Kent writes a lot of books about like dissociation and different mental illnesses, and so from that perspective it's like a thriller novel, but it also sheds some light onto like dissociation and dissociative disorders, so I think that that's really good. Next is 180 Seconds by Jessica Park. There is a social media star who does an experiment with a bunch of strangers where you stare at each other for 180 seconds and then they end up falling in love, so that's kind of the story behind that. And An Instant by Suzanne Redfern. I really like this one. Basically this family gets in an accident and this girl dies, and the girl is like telling the story of her family in the aftermath of the accident from the perspective of her as like a ghost, if that makes sense. Number 20, oh I said 20, this was the 20th book I read. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7th fave is I'm Fine and Neither Are You by Camille Pagan, and I think it's Pagan. Camille Pagan. And basically this girl finds her best friend dead, and she thought her best friend's life was perfect, so very interesting read. Next is The Missing Sister by Elle Mar, and this one is this girl gets this email from her sister's boyfriend in Paris and is like, yeah, so your sister's dead. But she knows that's not true, so she is like looking for her sister, and there's just like a bunch of stories and clues to try to find her. Very thriller, pretty good. Number, I don't know what number this is, but is A Thousand Splendid Suns by Claude Husseini, and I read this book in high school as actually like a reading assignment, and it's my favorite book of all time. Like it's literally so good. It's 2 different girls in Afghanistan who have very different stories, but they end up living together, and it's like the history of Afghanistan. So if you don't know much about the history of Afghanistan, then this really just gives you insight into the different wars and stuff that happen. It's really good. It's very heartbreaking, but it's such a good book, and it's so well written, and you just like get such an emotional attachment to the characters. I was so sad when it ended, but it's literally so good. You have to read it. Next is The Last Thing She Ever Did by Greg Olson, and this is another one by Greg Olson, but this one is not based on a true story. It's just a fiction novel, but basically something happens to this little boy so basically there's this woman, she lives next door to this family, and the little boy goes missing, and the whole book is them looking for this little boy. Next is Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon, and seriously, this book is so good. I saw that is it this one or is it the other one? Did I rent this one? I can't remember if I rented this movie or not, but it's a movie. But I decided I wanted to read the book first because I had seen commercials for it. Basically, this girl has an immunodeficiency, a disease called SCID, and she basically lives in a bubble, and then a boy moves next door, and it kind of tells her story. It's really good. So good. Literally so good. I also read The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. I really preferred Everything Everything over The Sun Is Also a Star, but it is by the same author, and it is basically this girl is Jamaican and her family is about to be deported. So basically it's like 24 hours of her trying to get to this lawyer to try to keep her family from being deported, and she meets this guy along the way and they fall in love, and of course they fall in love. It's a young adult novel, but it's really good. But like I said, I preferred Everything Everything just because I liked the way the story ended better. Next is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. In the midst of everything that happened with the George Floyd protests and the Black Lives Matter protests in June, I decided to read this book because it is, even though it's a fiction novel, it's very, like, I was so surprised at how accurate it was to what was going on in the real world. And I, as a white person, will never know what it's like to be discriminated against or fear for my life because of the color of my skin. And I think that it's written from the perspective of a African-American girl. She lives in a rundown, poor neighborhood, but she goes to a private rich kids school full of white people, and she's having to balance her life between those two places when one of her best friends from childhood is killed by a police officer. He was unarmed, and so it just goes through the perspective of her deciding whether she wants to speak up about it because she was the one who saw it happen. So it was a really traumatic event for her, but it really sparks a lot of protest and a lot of social change in the area that she's in. Next is 5 Feet Apart by Rachel Lippincott, and this is also a movie, and I decided to read the book before I watched the movie. But basically it's these two people who, not two, it's like this, it's from the perspective of this girl, and she has cystic fibrosis, so she has problems with her lungs. Her lungs basically are drowning her, and so she has to go to the hospital a lot, and she's spending time in the hospital during this book. And there's this guy who comes that has a disease that if he, I'm not sure if you've heard anything about cystic fibrosis, but basically it's just like a general rule that people with CF are not supposed to be within 6 feet of someone else that has CF because your germs could kill each other, and you have to wear masks. It's kind of like COVID right now, but on a much more serious level because their lungs do not work. And so basically they become really good friends, and they decide that they're gonna take back a single foot, so they're only 5 feet apart instead of 6 feet apart because they become really good friends. They fall in love, of course they do, but they can't even get closer than 5 feet apart from each other, so it's a really interesting read. Next is The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. This is an older book. I think it came out in 2008, but it also is a movie, and I saw the movie before I read the book. I saw the movie a long time ago, but basically this girl is murdered, and she's watching from her heaven, watching the aftermath of her family trying to find her, of trying to figure out what went wrong. And you also are like seeing the murderer and him going through life after he's murdered her, things like that. It's really, really good. And then finally she's like accepted that she's dying, so she like finally goes to heaven. Next is the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy. So there's Crazy Rich Asians, China Rich Girlfriend, and Rich People Problems, and they're all by Kevin Kwan. And seriously, these are so freaking good. They're so funny. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but Crazy Rich Asians is a movie, and I saw the movie I don't know how long ago, but basically there's this girl, she is I'm trying to think. She was born in China and then she went to the States. So she's an American raised Chinese person, and her boyfriend is from Singapore, and basically he's like crazy rich, and he invites her to go to Singapore for the summer with him, and she learns all about the Crazy Rich Asians. And then Rich People Problems and China Rich Girlfriend are just continuations of the story, but they're so good. They're so funny, so well written. 10 out of 10 in my book for all 3 of them. So 30 out of 30 if we're doing all 3 of them. Next is The Two Lives of Lydia Bird by Josie Silver. I say last year like it was 2019, but it's not. At the end of 2019, I read One Day in December by Josie Silver, and it was so good, so I knew I had to read another book by her. And when she came out with The Two Lives of Lydia Bird, it did not disappoint. Basically, it is this girl, Lydia, on her birthday, her boyfriend is killed in a car accident, and she goes between her dream world where she is still with her dead boyfriend. He's alive. They're living like an alternate universe where he did not die, and then the real world where he is dead, and she has to continue her life in that way. So it's those 2 different stories but 1 person, and it's really, really good. Next is Darling Rose Gold by Stephanie Roble. This one is very similar to, if you guys are familiar with the Gypsy Rose Blanchard story, where Munchausen by proxy, is that what it's called? Basically this girl is ill. Her mom pretended that she was ill for her whole life, and her mom gets caught and is arrested, goes to prison, and then she gets out of prison, and it's basically the story of her reintegrating into society, living with her daughter even after she pretended like she was like dying her whole life. So if you are familiar with the Gypsy Blanchard story and the Munchausen by proxy, that's kind of what this is about. Next is The Bright Side of Going Dark. There is this girl, by Kelly Harms. There's this girl who is a social media influencer, and she throws her phone off of a mountain. But instead of throwing it off the mountain, someone else gets a hold of her phone or gets a hold of her social media profile, takes over her phone, pretends to be this influencer, but the influencer has no idea because she doesn't have her phone. So they end up meeting someone. I don't know. It's a whole thing. It's really hard to explain, but it's a really good book. So I listened to the audiobook. It was really good. Next is Heartbones by Colleen Hoover. I am not gonna lie, I have not really been disappointed by a single book by her. They're literally all so good. But Heartbones is about this girl whose her mom dies of a drug overdose in the beginning of the book, and so she has to go and live with her estranged father for the summer because she's not quite 18, not quite ready for college because she just graduated, so she has to go live with her dad. And she has like a whole new family. She has a new stepsister, she has a new stepmom that she didn't even know about until she gets there, and then she meets the boy next door, and of course they fall in love, but he has some secrets of his own, and so it's really good. It's a love story. Obviously it's a young adult novel, but it's really good. Next is The House Guest by Mark Edwards, and this one was definitely not what I was expecting, but Mark Edwards writes a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Lots of suspense. Basically this girl knocks on the door of her friends in New York, and they have people that are house sitting for them, and they're like, well, if you're friends with our friends, then come on in, you can stay. But they don't actually know her, and she has some secret, and some things happen to these people. It's very interesting, very weird, very interesting. Definitely took a turn that I was not expecting, but it was really good. As you can see, I like thriller and suspense novels. Defending Jacob by William Landy. If you guys have not heard of it, Apple TV Plus has a series called Defending Jacob, and it has Chris Evans, who plays Captain America. He's the dad. But basically this district attorney. He's an assistant district attorney for his city, and then a kid in his son's class is found dead, murdered, stabbed, whatever the case. I think he was stabbed. But then his son is the main suspect in the case, and so basically the whole book is of them defending their son, who they think is not, who the people suspect he's a murderer, and his parents say he's not, and it's a whole story. It's really good. Next is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Colleen Hoover has hit this list several times. But basically it's this girl who grew up in an abusive household, and she never understood why her mom never left her abusive dad. He was not abusive to her, but he was abusive to her mom, and she never understood. So she meets this boy that she falls in love with, obviously, because that's what happens in these Colleen Hoover novels. But she falls in love with him, and it goes through the whole story of her trying to figure out, I don't know, she learns a lot about her mom in the process, but that's kind of the story. But also there's an issue with a boy that she grew up with, her first love, so there's a conflict there. And the last book on this list is All This Time by Mickey Daughtry and Rachel Lippincott. Rachel Lippincott is the one who wrote 5 Feet Apart. But basically this guy and this girl, they get in a car accident. She dies, he doesn't. He just has like a minor leg injury, and then he has to learn how to live without her. But they were breaking up like when they were in the car accident, so he's like, I guess we're over now. So he basically has to learn to live without her, carry on with his life, and then he meets this girl that has also suffered a great loss, and it is a whole story about them falling in love. And then there is a major plot twist that I was not expecting at all, but it was literally so good. I thought I was gonna hate the way that the book ended after the plot twist happened, but I was very pleasantly surprised. 10 out of 10. I think it's a newer one, and the cover art is absolutely stunning. So that is all I have for the books that I read in 2020 that I really love. Like I said, I have a whole list that I put on my Instagram in a highlight, so you guys can check that out if you want to see the whole list. There are some books on that list that I do not even remember what they were about because I read them so long ago and they didn't stand out to me. So take with that what you will. But my favorites are highlighted. I also added a couple that I read in 2019 that I really liked as well on that list that's on there. So if you're looking for book recommendations, definitely check that out. That's all I have for this video. If you guys want to see the books I read in 2021, then stay tuned. Subscribe so that in 2022 I can share that list. So that's all I have for today's video. Thank you so much for watching if you made it to this point, because I've been filming for a long time right now. So I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.